if you do go back in time, I feel like सबसे पहले तो like you'll be stuck in a loop because your present self in every like frame it'll have to go back in time. Like suppose you go 5 years back in time, then that 5 year back you when he reaches the present state, he'll again go back in time to like maintain that cycle. So your future का जो भी आपका ट्रैक है या जो भी आपका फ्यूचर का जो पाथ है वो that will be hindered, I feel, and you'll just be stuck in that loop. And which is why this story of Predestination is also about a loop, because he becomes the fizzle bomber, he dies, and then like he kills the fizzle bomber, then he puts the baby back into position, and that cycle just keeps on repeating and repeating and repeating. There is no straight end to his journey.
Anybody wants to start sharing their first thoughts? किसी ने जो आज ही फिल्म देखी पहली बार फॉर एग्जांपल, या फिर रिसेंटली फिल्म देखी है, any first thoughts or last thoughts or whatever they understood or did not understand about the film?
Yeah, I saw Predestination मतलब एकदम beginning में, like when I didn't even know about movies and I didn't used to watch movies. उस टाइम पहले जो वो हर एक मूवी लवर का जर्नी नहीं होता है, सबसे पहले नोलन की मूवीज देख लो और एक बार इंसेप्शन, इंटरस्टेलर ये सब देख लिया तो फिर और ऐसी मूवीज क्या है, तो somebody suggested like Predestination. So I guess I was in 11th standard and I saw Predestination. And obviously पहली बारी कुछ समझ में नहीं आया, but like the thing with Predestination was it was confusing, it was very complicated, but वो ending का जो montage है ना, उसमें ऐसा like you get the feeling कि yeah, you've understood something, what is twin paradox and things like that, to like understand the film. With Predestination, I was able to grasp the fact that all the characters were the same people in fact. So वो एक basic जो क्लोजर था फिल्म का वो समझ में आ गया था. बट जब लाइक 2-3 साल पहले कॉलेज में रीवॉच करी थी और थोड़ा मतलब उसको और समझने की कोशिश की थी, आई kind of got into these like other aspects of it, like the predestination paradox, grandfather paradox, even the Christianity का जो थोड़ा बहुत influences और references हैं फिल्म में. So उसको देख के समझ में आया कि this is not just like a मतलब basic suspense story कि you are clueless for the 90% of the film and last 10% of the film everything resolves itself. So I kind of understood like the chote nuances bhi, and it's been a long time since I've watched it, but it's one of the most rewatchable films ever.
When I was started watching it and when जब उसको वो बच्चे को ऑर्फनेज के बाहर रखा, तो I was like हाँ मतलब I know ये eventually वही इतना की होने वाला है, ऐसे ऐसे ऐसे, but I never realized कि all of them are the same person. मेरे को वो चमके ही नहीं. मतलब I because sometimes I was feeling कि यार this film is about Jane and that actress and her story and then John's story basically. So my entire concept was कि why do we call this an Ethan Hawke film? Is not even there in the entirety. लगी नहीं रही कि उसकी फिल्म है. But then you actually watch the entire thing. मैं पोस्टर में भी वो क्यों नहीं है मेरे को समझ नहीं आ रहा. But then you watch it like अच्छा okay now probably makes sense.
I watched the movie the second time abhi just before the session. Before that I had seen it a few months back, and this time मैंने somehow just to try to understand a little better I wrote the years of when what was happening. While the first time I understood it was the same person, but अब जैसे paradox वाला जो concept है, I've not read about it. I've not researched about the movie at all, even though I've seen it twice. I might do it now. I mean, there are a lot of gaps which I have still not been able to understand.
It's still a theory, right? There's no evidence of time as a dimension. अगर हम देख रहे हैं, so it's just a hypothesis, right? It's just an assumption we are making, or is it actually कोई उसका अपने पास substantial level पे?
We can't call it just an assumption because abhi, I mean, there have been so many new revelations in the past 30 years specifically ना, like मतलब ये जो हमारा जो वो जो ग्राफ होता है ना, स्पेस टाइम का ग्राफ, एंड हाउ ग्रेविटी अफेक्ट्स दैट, जो कि इंटरस्टेलर में भी अप्रोक्सीमेटली दिखाया. लाइक माय वॉलपेपर इज आल्सो लाइक, सो दिस इज द स्पेस टाइम ग्राफ एंड like gravity is bending it, and that's how like when you travel next to a black hole also you travel at such a massive speed ki time slows down for you. So like when you approach the speed of light and you start experiencing like time in a very different rate, वो चीज ऑलरेडी प्रूव हो गई है, बिकॉज ऑल दीज जिनीवा में ऑल दीज वो क्या कहते हैं उसको, पार्टिकल एक्सेलरेटर्स एंड ऑल जो बने हैं,
Collider.
उसमें वो जो सब एटॉमिक पार्टिकल्स को जब क्लैश कराते हैं, तो उसका कुछ एक एक्सपेरिमेंट, आई डोंट रियली नो व्हाट इट्स ऑल अबाउट, बट उसमें कुछ वेलोसिटी या कुछ टाइम के अकॉर्डिंगली चेंज हो जाती है, एंड एज इट अप्रोचेस द स्पीड ऑफ लाइट और समथिंग। तो वो चीज प्रूव हो गई है कि मतलब टाइम कैन मूव for you differently and me differently depending on our velocities, but can we go back in time, can we manipulate events in time? That thing has no substantial evidence as of now.
If let's say we prevent a crime from taking place back then, but it will eventually balance out, right, in some way or the other, or would it not? Like if I prevent a crime of, let's say, 500 लोग को बचा लिया मैंने, could that maybe lead to chain of events उसके through कि उसके परसों जाके 1000 लोग मर गए? I'm just talking in that layman terms, मतलब कि वैसे consequences हो सकते हैं क्या इन चीजों के?
Yeah, possibly it is. And also there are like two things. One is this, how they treat time travel in this movie versus how they treat in Marvel. So in Marvel universe, you can't really change anything, because once you go to the past, that past becomes your present future. Like in the end game, if you remember, like someone suggests that we go kill Thanos while he was baby. And Hulk says that's not possible because it has already happened. So you can't really change anything. Once you go back, that becomes your present future.
Matlab even like mythology, or like not mythology, even in religious studies or even in modern physics, matlab it's not plausible, or it's not possible till now to go back in time. Like even in physics, like even in the science world, you cannot go back in time. Matlab that's not something that anybody has even like thought of, or even has like matlab put out a theory that this matlab, or a proof, or any sort of equation or anything. But if you do go back in time, I feel like sabse pehle to like you'll be stuck in a loop, because your present self in every like frame, it'll have to go back in time. Like suppose you go 5 years back in time, then that 5 year back you, when he reaches the present state, he'll again go back in time to like maintain that cycle. So your फ्यूचर का जो भी आपका ट्रैक है, या जो भी आपका फ्यूचर का जो पाथ है, वो that will be hindered, I feel, and you'll just be stuck in that loop. And which is why this story of Predestination is also about a loop, because he becomes the fizzle bomber, he dies, and then like he kills the fizzle bomber, then he puts the baby back into position, and that cycle just keeps on repeating and repeating and repeating. There is no straight end to his journey. तो वो एक लूप तो रहेगा. The other thing is that I don't know if two of you can exist in one मतलब particular time, because if you go 5 years back in time, then there's the original 5 year back you, and then there is you from the present time. So how does that affect the space time or whatever it is? Like Marvel movies में कुछ theory है and all, but I don't think it's based on actual science.
Yeah, so this entire loop thing, Marvel addressed it like really nicely in Loki. So without giving a lot of spoilers for those who haven't yet watched Loki, so the mechanism of how Loki ka wo pura time variance authority, how it works is basically if you go back in time and you change anything, their reality branches into like it separates into two different branches. All right, so that way, even in the grandfather paradox, if you go back and kill your grandfather, then two separate realities will emerge, one where you don't exist and one where you do exist. So when you go back to your own time frame, nothing will have changed. All of which you have changed will happen in the alternate branch. From that point of view, no matter how much you try to influence things in your past, your present would still be the same.
When you're creating two alternate realities which could exist, are you first of all not creating two different worlds, and are they two different worlds for all living things, or are they two different possibilities only for you? And whichever the case might be, are you not meddling with or affecting the future, which is not possible?
इसीलिए तो वो पूरा TVA बना The whole job of time variance authority is to stop variants. Variants are people who go back in time, is to stop them from creating these branching
This
universes
branching.
from existing. So whenever you go back in time and meddle with everything, it creates a branch, and that branch is an entire universe of its own. Matlab, exactly the same universe which existed until now, but only with that minor change. Baki sab, it's exactly the same as our universe only. But it's
But that
But
one
how can it be the
change,
same? Yeah.
exactly. I mean, that one thing could be changing a lot of things.
Ha,
So
ha,
there
ha.
could be two parallel realities,
Ha, ha.
not just for you who has meddled with time, but for
Ha.
every living
Everybody.
organism.
For everybody,
exactly.
it's a complete alag universe. So wo one cheese and whatever the consequences of those things are, wo hoga. If I go back in time and kill Hitler, फिर the other reality would be one where World War II did not happen. So वो अलग reality होगा जिसमें वो सब चल रहा होगा.
So, for example, I have a everyday ka route that I take to get to the station. For example, ठीक है? एक straight line है, मुझे रोज वहीं से जाना है. So point A to point B. So A is my house, B is the station. So every day I take the same route. Like point A to point B takes me 5 minutes. Point A to point B every day takes me 5 minutes. That is the everyday ka route that I know of. For example, this is the route that I've known of the entire time. One random day, I meet a stranger, I meet somebody who tells me that there is a shortcut to get to the point B, which goes from this area, for example, and which will take you there like 2 minutes sooner. And for example, I take that route that day. Now, because of one thing that I did differently, which I used to do every day, that created a timeline, like a different timeline entirely. Okay, that is what was the point of the whole TVA and whatever happens. So the person you are supposed to be and and the things you are supposed to do, in very simple layman terms, you are the thing you are supposed to do, you didn't do that, or you just did the same thing in a different way. Is why entirely a different timeline was created because of one decision that you took differently.
This other reality that you are talking about, or even others are talking about, उसका tangible sense में वो reality कहाँ है?
So अभी मैंने अगर वो दूसरा पार्ट ले लिया
मतलब conceptual level पे है, right?
conceptual
level पे है. But
अभी
हाँ.
so
तो tangible कहाँ है? मतलब अगर अर्थ ये है तो दूसरा अर्थ किधर है? मतलब ऐसे बोल रहा हूँ मैं.
दूसरा अर्थ नहीं है ना. It's just something. अभी for example, if there are other 8 versions, अभी समझ 8 versions है in total, out of which the only 1% does it, and the 7% do all the other 7 people do the same thing every day. That 1% का जो reality चल रहा है ना, that will get differentiated out of the linear path. अभी अगर a reality is in a linear path, that is how they explained it in the show. Like if the reality is a linear path, then if somebody did something else, it will take another path. Now, the reality you left to know is existing. It is going to continue as itself. But as you have taken another way to get to somewhere, that new branched reality is going to go parallel with your reality. For example, if you are taken away from your reality and you are put in that, so now you are going in another reality, which is your reality for yourself. Okay? But for people around you, you're not existing anymore. You left that point. You left at that point. You're not there in the point anymore. You're not in the path, linear path anymore. So there's another branched parallel line going, which has the same things as your life has. Something different. I mean, predestination ka the biggest loophole is who the fuck created him or her, for that matter. Because if he's the person who drops the baby there, and if he is the only person who gives the birth to the child, that is scientifically not possible at all.
What Siddharth was saying, he was going on the assumption that there's something is set, like you don't really have a free will, like you're supposed to be doing something, and if you don't do that, it branches reality. So in the same sense, like I don't believe in that kind. Like if at all parallel worlds exist, it's basically like if you have two choices and you make one, and the other, in other reality, you'll be making the other. So yeah,
Yeah,
the assumption is
so
that there are infinite possibilities.
possibilities. Exactly.
Exactly.
Because, for example, if I wouldn't have taken that path and I would have continued on the same path, some else of my variation would have taken that path.
Correct.
So always the options are going to go parallelly always.
You know, even this like concept of multiverses existing, and it's all related to traveling back in time and all, because matlab, basically like the biggest question of the 21st century is what people think is the string theory. Like, so abhi tak matlab पिछले मतलब 150 सालों से the only effort has been to find the smallest possible particle. पहले like atom molecules थे, फिर atoms बने, फिर electron proton neutron, फिर bosons, quarks, whatever. And now what the plausible smallest particle to exist in reality is like particles in the form of strings, vibrating strings. And what these people who believe in string theory say that these vibrating strings are not affected by time. So these strings are so small that they have this property of not, only a combination of them can like move through time, not them as a singular entity. So maybe it's possible that if we, I mean, in that movie also Ant-Man, there was this one scene where he becomes so small that he goes into some strange loop or something, or
Quantum
some
realm. Yeah, it
quantum
goes to the
realm,
quantum realm.
and because he achieves that size, he becomes so small, and it's not a very stable area to be also उस film में कहा गया है. So maybe if they actually prove that, then we might know if we can go back in time or if the multiverse exists. Because even if the multiverse exists, it's not possible कि हमारे ही different variations रहेंगे. There can be different people who look different to us but are us. So it can be anything. We have no idea. Like
Like this point, like the whole string theory wala point, is very beautifully shown in Interstellar, if you guys remember.
yeah,
When he travels back in time, that is how like they have shown like there are strings, there are
yeah,
little strings when he's like floating through time, and when he's trying to tell Murphy that I am here, like ask me to
yeah,
stay and everything. That is a very literal, proper representation of how they have shown
yeah.
it flowing, of course.
And the other like possibility to like go back in time is if you achieve a speed which is greater than the speed of light, which is also physically not possible as of now, but who knows, maybe someday it will be possible. Yeah, they've tried to reach मतलब ये particle accelerators में also they have tried to match the speed of light, but they've never crossed the speed of light, and nobody knows what happens when you cross the speed of light.
Which is I'm so fascinated with like the concept of people who like came up with like Flash and
Yeah,
so many characters we are like aware of, because of which we can understand the point of like whatever time traveling,
exactly.
going back in time.
I
Those
love
are
the Justice League ka
scientifically
naya
proven.
version, the Zack Snyder edited version, because
Yeah,
it visually shows Flash crossing the
crossing the
speed
time
of light and then the world slowly moving backwards,
moves
like pura
backwards.
frame moving backwards, the explosion going back and everything. Like it's beautifully portrayed.
I had a different thought or a different thought experiment that I wanted to discuss about. It's slightly philosophical and less scientific in that sense, but मतलब it would be interesting because थोड़ा सा इस पर बात हुआ था फिल्म में भी, which was that basically to save innocent people he was going back in time to वो उसको ढूंढने के लिए उसको to kill the person who was doing it. So I mean let me try to frame a question. Uh, would you kill 5 innocent babies, newborn babies, to save uh, your city, your city, मतलब basically let's say कसाब का पूरा नया गैंग आ रहा है वापस, ठीक है, and you have to save your city. Would you mind killing 5 babies? Would you mind killing baby kasab?
Of course I would use that logic जो वो लोग नहीं होते vegetarians who eat egg and they're like ये तो अभी पैदा ही नहीं हुआ है, इसको मारना गुनाह नहीं है. So I use that logic कि अभी पैदा ही हुआ है, जिंदगी शुरू नहीं हुई है, so you can kill a baby if he's going to grow up and be kasab.
Okay, Soumya.
I feel killing baby kasab will not help because जिसने kasab को जो वो था वो बनाया, that person just needed some person. If not Kasab, he would have created that out of someone else. So how can you find out? And if that person is not available, he will replace this person with some other person for the same concept. So I don't think you can change something which has happened.
That would depend on what the consequences would be. If you guarantee me कि हाँ, killing him will definitely save everyone, then ठीक है, consider कर सकते हैं. But if you bring in other things कि नहीं, there might be alternate वो चीज. Again, it brings back the entire grandfather paradox again, because if you kill baby Kasab, फिर होगा नहीं कुछ इवेंट ऐसा ना, वो क्या 26/11 होगा नहीं. And if 26/11 होगा नहीं, then what motivated you to go back and kill a baby? You killed a baby for no reason then.
So, okay, let's say the city you're living in, okay? Or maybe let's assume that our city is like a jail, okay? So there are very bad people, like generally bad people. Let's say not in the sense कि सबका rape कर रहे हैं types वाले bad maybe, but just like road पे से गाड़ी चलाते नहीं हैं, या कहीं भी थूक देते हैं, कहीं भी कुछ भी हरकतें करते हैं ऐसे, you know, कि मतलब cat calling करेंगे या फिर क्या बोलते हैं cyber crime and all sorts of things people are doing. Would you still, like, there are and from this range to the range of people who gang rapes and killing people for the sake of money, and some even serial killers इनको पैसे का फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, just killing people, ये सब तुम्हारे शहर में कंसिस्ट करते हैं ये लोग. क्या तुम ये लोगों को बचाने के लिए डेरी कसाब या any you will kill 5 babies, will you do that, like just to add more layer to it?
Yeah, now it feels like वो HR questions देते हैं ना इंटरव्यू में, वैसा फील हो रहा है एकदम से.
Okay, this is your training time happening right now.
I think so. For to answer your question, see, I don't understand Marvel or DC much. I've just watched Batman के थोड़े बहुत films, okay. But मतलब उसमें जो concept है ना, Gotham City, मतलब वो हमेशा ही there is corrupt things that are corrupt. So how much ever you try to fix the wrongdoings, you don't know where they are going to creep up from. So how many ever babies you try to kill, how many ever wrongdoings you try to go back and correct, it is always going to creep up because you can't fix everything. And then फिर वो भी concept आ जाता है yin yang वाला, when there is good there has to be bad to balance it out. तो
yeah, there was a sociologist back in the day, Mandeville or something was his second name. So he had said that for good to exist, evil needs to exist. So how will you define what's good and bad? Like how will you? There's the structures that we have created around the social structures, any machinery that we have in terms of the civil machineries, from police to everything else that we have, to roads and everything else, is based on the assumption that we need structure and not chaos. Right?
that is the normal which we as a society have created. If you're
Yes,
driving,
law
you have
of
to drive
averages.
by these rules.
Yes.
And like you mentioned कि उन्होंने बहुत बुरा नहीं किया but थोड़ा बुरा किया. So you have a degree of identifying what is बहुत बुरा and what is कम बुरा. अगर बहुत बुरा exist ही नहीं करता तो तुम्हारे लिए कम बुरा ही सबसे ज्यादा बुरा होता. And for example cannibalism, अगर cannibalism as a concept कभी introduce ही नहीं होता इस दुनिया में, तो हमको अदर एनिमल्स को खाना ही सबसे बुरी चीज लगती probably, कि मतलब हम एनविजन ही नहीं कर पाते कि इंसान को भी खा सकता है, तो हमको probably सबसे बुरी चीज लगती इंसान किसी और जानवर को खा रहा है. Just for instance, I mean your benchmark of any degree of anything, you need a reference point and you need extremes to define it, to define the entire spectrum.
See, again, it depends. Ki, matlab, there are so many theories and none of them have been like proven for reality. Like, agar if you follow butterfly effect, so agar even if you go back and matlab do something little with kasab या मतलब उसके life में कुछ छोटा सा भी आप change कर दो, तो फिर वो attack होगा ही नहीं in the future. Like even small changes lead to completely different events in the future. But if you follow this theory that no matter how many things you change, the future will still be the same, तो फिर it doesn't make sense to kill him or like do anything. So it depends on what your mentality is, what your beliefs are. And I feel like even if you follow butterfly effect, you kill Kasab, 2611 doesn't happen, but some other attack will happen in its place. कहीं और लोग मरेंगे. So अगर आपके खुद के, अगर मेरा कोई खुद का जान पहचान वाला मरा हो, उसको बचाने के लिए, if I have a self motive, I'll definitely kill him. It all depends on my motive.
Yeah, I think I
Who
completely
knows?
agree to that.
Who knows? Because you went back and killed Kasab, you felt that killing people is the best thing, and you yourself end up being the reason for something like a 2611.
Yeah, I think I get it, because it's the faces that become that manifest or represent an narrative or an idea or an ideology. So ये narratives या ये ideology तो जिंदा रहेगी, कसाब हो या कोई और भी हो, वो चेहरा हटेगा, change होगा. The people who represent it might probably change. So
Yeah.
to actually create a change, you'll just have to. So I had read this somewhere recently, and पता भी था इसके बारे में, but I just got a better articulation for it, that if you need to change a certain narrative that is existing, a certain way people think, you need to give them a better narrative. Simple as that. Like अगर लोग बोलते हैं ऐसे सेंस में, आज पॉलिटिकल सेंस में बोलते हैं कि बीजेपी फॉर एग्जांपल इज सो स्ट्रांग राइट नाउ, एंड कोई मिल नहीं रहा है एक्चुअली जो इतने लेवल पे उनको नेशनल लेवल पे कम्पीट कर सके. So what's the best way to do that is to give a even better narrative than what they have presented, a even better proposition as a value proposition, as a product, provide even better than what they are providing. So similarly, यहाँ पे भी if you actually have to change something, you might actually have to provide a better proposition or a better narrative कि ये ideology जो है वो बदले, तो शायद जाके वो क्या बोलते हैं वो सिचुएशन ना अराइज हो कि ये नहीं तो कोई और कर लेता. वो नहीं अराइज होगा अगर वो हम आई एम टॉकिंग फ्रॉम अ वेरी कॉन्सेप्चुअल लेवल ऑब्वियसली, मतलब आई एम नॉट रियली गोइंग इनटू द रियलिटीज ऑफ इट, बट जस्ट दैट if you provide a better narrative to Kasab when he was growing up, and everybody in his locality, or not locality exactly, sorry, in his vicinity and the way people are growing around him, if everybody had a different narrative they were living by, probably then things would be different. It's a more on a more ideation macro level, I think I'm saying.
So changing the narrative meaning what? How? As a third person, or even as a first person, what do you think will change the narrative for you, or what do you think will change the narrative for Kasab? What can you do in your position?
I don't
just
know.
a thought.
Yeah, no. If let's say I have to go back, वैसे बोल रहा हूँ.
No, I'm saying right now there might be people who might be thinking of doing something which should not be done ethically. What if, so हम वो कहते हैं ना कि nip the bad in the bud, and मतलब किसी भी चीज को nip it in the bud so that it doesn't grow to be as bad a thing. So मतलब that is the concept, right? I mean, had Kasab been given that kind of a direction, probably he would not have been influenced. But फिर the thing is कि मतलब maybe someone else would have influenced. Someone else would have been influenced. So what are we trying to do? How? So for example, bombing वाला जो concept था, which was the entire incident which Predestination का concept as a movie was trying to save everyone from. Instead of ruining the time dimension, what can we do that can change that? Or can we really do anything?
But Soumya, that is the point, right? Like how you just mentioned, no, that what if you do it? Like, you are the person who saves it, and you're also the only person who fucks it up aage jaake. That is what predestination is all about. It is yourself who's going to go into the future and is going to start killing people. And now, up till the point you don't know who that person is, you're going to try to save that person and to save the people from that person until you realize that it's you yourself who's doing all of these things. So that is what I'm saying. Okay? So the loophole that is very like intricately there in predestination is that there is no start point. हमें एंड पॉइंट तो पता है क्या होने वाला है, like he's going to kill himself, but where did it start? And if he kills himself, then how is it going to start again, right? So that is how the entire possibility of it happening works. Because अभी जैसे हर एक रियलिटी में तो ये पॉसिबिलिटी नहीं हम लोग गिन रहे हैं, इज अ सिंगुलर रियलिटी दैट वी आर अ पार्ट ऑफ इन द प्रीडेस्टिनेशन मूवी, कि ये पैदा हुआ, ये हुआ, एंड सी साइंटिफिकली he is only giving birth to himself, maybe in three ways. For example, like he is the guy she has sex with, she is the person who gives birth to herself. So yeah, this is not scientifically logical also, but to visualize it, to think about it, it's beautiful. Like आपको ये thought process भी आना is a very huge thing in altogether as a story for that matter. But yeah, as I mentioned, like you are a part of a loop that has been created. It's just that you're going to now witness this, but then you're going to get out of it also, because at the end we are never shown that if he kills himself or not, right? But that is the point. Like that is what we think that he's going to do. Like uske alawa kuch option nahi hai. Now, as Sankalp mentioned, it's the morale that you have been following all your life, and now when the point of what do we call it, justice, a point of realization comes to you, this is a decision that you have to make, right? Like, should I do what I was going forward to all of my life? Because if I do that, it's going to end me only. That is a moral dilemma part also that comes in.
Also, like if you change one thing, there are going to be a number of changes related to that, but in some way or the other the balance is going to be maintained. Because अगर if you look at the 27/11 का 26/11 का जो attack का जो night था, suppose like 180 people died in that attack. But if you suppose imagine the situation कि उस दिन वो attack के खबर सुन के a lot of people they didn't step out of their homes, they locked themselves in their houses and everything. और बॉम्बे में if there is a figure that you like pick, like road accidents में 300 या 400 लोगों की मौत हर रोज होती है. Now imagine because of the attack people are restricting themselves to their houses and not going out, and in that way, like those people who die in road accidents or in local trains or everything, they don't die. So एक तरीके से 180 लोग मरे but उसके कारण 300 लोग बचे. So morally, do you call that a right thing or not? Like the balance in some way or the other always gets maintained. चीजें बदलेंगी, कौन मरेगा कौन नहीं मरेगा वो डिपेंड करेगा सिचुएशन में, बट कोई ना कोई जरूर मरेगा, कोई ना कोई जरूर बचेगा. That's the thing about it.
No, and this is also a thing that they some shows and movies also talk about, that no matter what you do, the thing that you're trying to change is always going to happen somehow. Like if you're trying to save, I mean, for example, just as Soumya mentioned before, if you kill Kasab, there's going to be another person who's going to take his place. But if you, for example, so it is bound to happen. No matter what you do in your past, present, future, whatever, that thing that is supposed to happen will happen. So no matter how much you try to change time. So for example, if it's a जैसे भी हिटलर है फॉर एग्जाम्पल, ठीक है, तो वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 हुआ because of him. So if, as we were trying to talk about, like if we kill him or if we just like उसका हृदय परिवर्तन करने का हम लोग ट्राई करते हैं, what if there is a very lethal war that comes in rather than what we were trying to prevent? So it, as Abhinav also mentioned, that is more devastating than what you are trying to prevent. So somewhere or the other you're creating more destruction, right? By changing something because of your personal reason. ये तो random बात कर रहे हैं, because of personal reason, for example. But if it's also with respect to what the world would want, अभी एकदम basic, अभी हम लोग इतना बार-बार बात करें तो it's always going to come around, because अभी Avengers Endgame है. There's a very funny meme about it, that you, for example, I am the guy. I was happily married for 10 years. Now my wife got snapped. She's no more. Now I had to move on somehow. अभी 5 साल अभी फर्स्ट तो चलो मैंने निकाल दिया कुछ ना कुछ करके. अभी हम जो बचे हुए वो क्या करें, थोड़ी मारेंगे घर बैठ के. मेरा पूरा फैमिली चलो स्नैप हो गया, आई एम द ओनली पर्सन लेफ्ट इन द फैमिली, and after that I get married, I have other like family now, like I have, like for example, I have a kid like, who's like 2 years old, and then 5 years later they fucking bring back everybody now. I didn't want it, right? I didn't want that to happen because I moved on. मेरा तो लाइफ चल रहा था ना. So this is, अभी ये उनको जबरदस्ती करने का था, because they are like हमले को करने का, हम लोग ऐसे शांति से थोड़ी बैठ सकते हैं, right? Technically you love the movie, amazing, I love the movie as myself as well, but when you come to it like with logical thoughts and everything, it is not a good thing. Like it's actually, I'm not even, if I'm not wrong, they have like in like joking way they have mentioned it somewhere also, that how like somebody's life had changed, but now they have to go back to something that they didn't want to go back to, maybe. Like they
Even
had a
Tony's story himself, right?
they didn't want a
he was
shitty
happy.
life. Yeah. They didn't want a shitty life, and now they have a better life because of the Thanos cut snap. So of course there are people who are in favor with what he did.
Yeah.
So see, for me, personal reasons, I love villains more than heroes. It's always been a thing for me. So it's not that like हाँ उसने किया मतलब सही किया करके, ऐसा नहीं. But logically thinking, and of course you think about it practically, as Avinash also mentioned that you saved 180 people, that 300 people that day from not getting killed. तो अभी वो जो 300 लोग उस दिन अगर नहीं मरते, अगर उस दिन सॉरी मर जाते, तो एक जगह का, अभी से कोलाबा पकड़ लो जहाँ पे सबसे ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम हुआ था, कि सब लोग कोलाबा पकड़ लो, कोलाबा के लोग अगर घर पे ही बैठते थे, तो वहां पे बिकॉज ऑफ दिस पैनिक स्टैम्पीड हो जाता था, या कुछ और हो जाता था, कुछ और ऐसा मैन मेड कैलामिटी हो गया बिकॉज ऑफ ऑल ऑफ दिस स्टुपिडिटी. इतना फिर सब भागदौड़ हो गया कि कोई ब्रिज गिर गया, बिल्डिंग गिर गया, etc etc. This is something that you created. So preventing something has a cause and effect on another thing. Abhi, there's another movie called as Looper. There's Bruce Willis in it. So that also goes on a similar concept, but it meets each other. Like you're meeting your younger self. That is what the whole point is. He kills people. That is his job. But when his own self comes in from that portal, he's fucked. He's like, what should I do now? I can't kill myself. That is the moral dilemma ka point again, overall. So Hamesha, it's either about a very basic way to go about things, or either it's about how you're going to have a moral dilemma out of the blue, because everything depends on your decision. Like if you decide to kill yourself, you are not going to exist. But if you decide to let yourself live, it's going to cause another problem for a lot of other people. So it's either one life or a lot of lives.
Also, one thing that we are missing is that because of media and everything, we have associated the whole event of 2611 with Kasab, which is why we think if we prevent Kasab from existing, 2611 will not happen. But the thing is, like, it goes back to like more than 1,000 years. Like 2611 goes back to the 99 war, 99 war goes back to the 47 partition, partition goes back to the British invasion of India, it goes back to the Mughals and everything. Like it's all related. तो एक चीज को रोकने के लिए वो पीछे पीछे जाते 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 उन डॉट्स को कनेक्ट होते हैं, कब तक जाओगे आप रोकने के लिए. सो इट इज गोइंग टू हैपन. दिस इज, ये एक मोहरा है. लाइक इट्स जस्ट द फेस ऑफ इट, इट्स द थंबनेल ऑफ द वीडियो. आप थंबनेल चेंज कर सकते हो, वीडियो सेम रहेगी.
It will probably help in making a larger political point.
Yeah.
If Phantom, for example, if you remember that film of Saif Ali Khan that had come, it was about killing the people who had. It's a fictional take on killing the people who were responsible for 2611. मतलब the पीछे जो लोग थे उसके. He went to UK as well and in Pakistan, and he killed those people. But it was more of a revenge story, not like a travel back in time story. But the entire deal with that was that, sure, you killed them, but maybe for some time the organizations that they used to manage and control वो थोड़ी इधर उधर होगी. But I'm pretty sure there might be people who will be able to take up his position pretty soon.
There will be, and all these events, like matlab the reason or like the people behind these events, like the face will be Kasab, his responsibility will be more, but in a way all of us are connected to this event. अगर स्टीव जॉब्स ने कंप्यूटर नहीं बनाया होता तो 9/11 शायद ना होता, because how would they like have the
Yeah.
technology to communicate? So in a very minute way he's also responsible, not willingly but in like a passive way आप कह सकते हो. So everything, like a system is responsible to everything and we are a part of the system. So if we change one person out of it, it's not going to change. Either you change the entire system, which is why like I think a more important question would have been like if you could have gone back in time इतना पहले कि you would have like even prevented humanity, like evolution में कुछ ऐसा change करते हैं हम कि हमारा खुद का existence ना होता, तब क्या change होता? Like would you do that with all these problems around you or not?
Predestination, I think, dealt with more of the idea that everything is determined. If I'm not mistaken, the film dealt more with that. But it again and again pressed on the idea, bar same dialogue tha, of you always have a choice. You always have a choice. Interstellar में भी वो ये line था. So I think there's always that human choice ka element. The fact, for example, in Interstellar, they decided to go to Matt Damon wala planet and not the other one because that was not suitable or not feasible to go to. That was a choice they made. Their entire scene of the docket scene, the idea that he actually decided कि नहीं हम कर सकते हैं करके जो भी, the choices that were made in the larger realm of things already being determined, or if not determined, then at least not in our control. Because I think sometimes when we don't understand concepts or there are things which are beyond our understanding or control, we just assume for the sake of convenience or to justify it for ourselves that ये determined है. I think that's an easier way for us to explain things to ourselves. कि अगर that's how religion has been explained as well. आपका एक determined, you have a reason why you are born. आप उसके लिए जीते हो and determined, which determines what will happen to you after that, like after death as well. So I think it helps us lead life better by having an idea of where we might end up. This determinism wala entire concept in that sense.
I don't think in this film, not everything is like defined as such, like predestined, because Jane changes things. So just this loop of him like meeting her in the past and then making the baby, this loop is only that thing is predestined, I think, because he changes and he prevents so many deaths being happened, right? So you can't say that everything is predestined. So there is free will, but to what extent? And to that Jane guy, only he probably doesn't have a free will. Like he's supposed to be doing that over and over again.
There is another understanding that probably free will does not exist. What really exists or what you have control over rather is how you deal with it mentally or psychologically, whatever's happening in front of you or whatever happens to you. For example, before the coffee gets cold also is a discussion that we'll have. Maybe I felt you can't control what's going to happen to you or what has already happened to you. Sorry, what will happen to you that you might have control over, but still you don't have control over what is happening to you. What you have control over is the way you deal with it or the way you perceive it or process it and all of that. So I think free will probably exists only to that extent.
One thing which I am kind of, my mind is trying to reach is, I mean, based on all these points, is when we say there is something which is supposed to happen or there is a path everything is going to go through, we are just trying to tussle around who determines it, who determines what is going to happen or who determines what has happened. So we're talking about free will and we're talking about something which is already, say, for lack of a better explanation, destiny. So your free will versus your destiny or something which is supposed to written. So now, while this term is not right, which I'm using, but individualism, meaning ki as an individual, how you feel you can influence something. So maybe there is a part of the reality which can be influenced by you and what you do and what decisions you take and what decisions you don't take. But it is also to some extent, so it's like partly also dependent on the entire group of people which are around it, like which are causing it or which are being affected by it, or
Yeah.
not just people. So I would say times and the past era or whatever it is, the series of events which are leading to that. So that also defines what is going to happen, and your individual will to do something or not do something is also going to impact it, maybe at a very minuscule level, but when you look at each person involved, maybe it becomes a significant contribution to that reality. And the history and the past and everything that has led to it, circumstances, destiny, whatever,
Yeah.
I don't know what to call it, also leads down to it. I don't know what is your take on it.
No, but from an etymological sense, अगर हम लोग free will का मतलब देखें, the term itself देखें, तो free will का मतलब क्या हुआ? Free from any other influence. You decide, you take the decision or the choice. How free are we talking about when we say free? You know, it comes down to that, because I was reading this book recently. उसमें एक line था जो, again, trigger warning. It's a concept that the person is talking about. तो उस sense में बोल रहा हूँ. The person had said that the only thing we have control over as humans, a choice, or जहाँ पे free will actually exists, is the act of suicide. Nothing else is in our control, or nothing else is something that exists out of free will. And it sort of made sense to me. Again, trigger warning. I'm still हम conceptual level पे चीजों पे बात कर रहे हैं. So let's be in that zone only, okay? So because whatever decision I'm making, let's say I'm making a decision that मुझे life में ये करना है अगले step. I have to start a job and not go for the studies. तो मेरा decision है कि जो मेरे अराउंड 15 इन्फ्लुएंस थे जिन्होंने मेरे को डिसाइड करवाया कि मतलब probably do this, probably don't do that, तो मेरा डिसीजन था कि ये 15 इन्फ्लुएंसेस के थ्रू में डिसीजन आया था. मेरा एक्चुअली व्हेन वी से ना कि मतलब मेरा एक्चुअली कोई थॉट्स जो वो खुद के थॉट्स है भी कि नहीं है. Like sometimes when we are randomly thinking and we think यार क्या बढ़िया कॉन्सेप्ट दिमाग में आया, but then you पढ़ते हो तो ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्ट करता है यार, तो वो भी कभी कभी ऐसे होता है आपको. So what really is original in that sense? I think वो भी एक पूरा क्वेश्चन आता है इसके अराउंड से, if it makes any sense.
But even with suicide, like I think it's also deeply influenced by these circumstances, because matlab, coincidentally I was watching this Kiarostami film called Taste of Cherry, which is about a
Love
man
it. Love it.
trying to like kill himself and everything. And in the initial part of the film, you feel like, acha, ye iska free will hai, isko marna hai, and he just wants to die. He's just looking for someone to help him, cremate his body and stuff. But by the end of the film, you realize it is the circumstances, it is the people who, like, in the end, he goes there. We don't know if he's actually dead or not. But wo jaake andar wo let jata hai. And I'm very sorry I've spoiled the film for those who have not seen it. But I'm sure kuch samajh mein nahi aaga. Dekhna, it's a beautiful film. But I feel like even with suicide, I don't know anyone, or I haven't heard of anyone who has just been like, कि अच्छा मेरे को मरना है, मैं मर जाएगा. It's always been the circumstances inflicted upon the person and the people around him who have like created a world so toxic and so bizarre that you don't have a choice. Most of the people who kill themselves do that because they feel like they don't have a choice. And I mean, there might be people in the history, or like dunya itni badi hai, like the past is so dense that there will be someone who will be like, I want to die just for the gist of it, just for like just to look at the other side of life or something like that. There might be people who would have done that, but it can be either way. Like most of the suicides are because of the circumstances. Like you have no choice, you have no option, and you want to escape. And the escape is designed by all the other factors in life, which is like because of the other people in your life or other situations in your life.
लाइक अविनाश ने बोला ना कि जो डिप्रेशन वाला पॉइंट था कि चेन ऑफ इवेंट्स, और मतलब basically some or the other factors will lead to some other things. It's never just one thing. So matlab it's like this whole link, and even if you take one part, there's still the part that is existing before and that is existing after. So like taking one part of it, जैसे हम लोग बात कर रहे थे कि if we go and kill either kasab or predestination में जैसा हुआ, तो it's just taking one part out of it. will make thoda difference. But as we kind of came to a point, the things that are going to happen, if not by that person, it will be done by some other person. So it's like it's just a part that we are trying to control, but the whole still remains.
But I think at least for us at this point, all we have is narratives and what we can ascribe ourselves to. Do we go with a more theological, religious narrative for us to ascribe ourselves and lead our life? So when I say that, it could either be a free will wala world that we understand, I decide what I do and what happens to me, or we have whatever of these narratives that we live by. All I understand right now is that these are narratives and we probably can choose, or if not choose, we end up choosing or get conditioned to choose something of these, because the narratives में से हमें choose करना. But while saying all of this, I also realize that I am presupposing the existential nature of life, because I am choosing a narrative ताकि मैं जिंदा रह सकूं. मतलब बेसिकली कोई मतलब तो था नहीं, बट आई एम चूजिंग समथिंग फॉर माई सेल्फ, राइट, ताकि मैं निकाल लूँ जिंदगी कुछ टाइम के लिए, कुछ अगले कुछ सालों के लिए. देन आई विल फाइंड समथिंग एल्स टू कीप ऑन गोइंग. सो आई एम प्रीसपोजिंग कि लाइफ का एक्चुअली कोई पर्पस नहीं है. सो अगेन नाउ दैट इज ऑल्सो अ हाइपोथेसिस आई एम गोइंग बाय, so which is why I love the different people what they had to say about existentialism as well. Like Albert Camus का भी जो philosophy था, that myth of Sisyphus वाला, कि वो rock लेके ऊपर चढ़ रहा है बार बार वो fail हो रहा है. All we need to assume at that point is that we have to assume that the guy is happy at that point. Sisyphus is happy doing that. तभी that's the entire point right now. कि what is the state of mind we deal with? तो वही probably might define how we deal with a life in general, if it makes any sense right now.
मतलब अभी उस टेंजेंट में जा ही रहे, तो I just wanted to add कि when we say that things are predestined, so like generally we say that in a state when we are आगे and we are looking in the back, like पीछे when we are reflecting. And the concept of free will that we were discussing, so maybe it exists in this moment. Like आगे जाके लगेगा कि that was result of whatever was happening around and all, but अभी अगर इस moment में उन सब चीजों के बारे में aware रह के, if we act out differently, or I don't know if I'm making sense, but अगर फ्री विल एग्जिस्ट करता है तो आई थिंक इट कैन एग्जिस्ट इन दिस मोमेंट, क्योंकि आगे जाके हमें लग सकता है कि ओके दिस वाज प्रीडिस्टाइंड, बट उस टाइम पे फॉर एग्जांपल अगर 10 दिन के बाद इस दिन पे पीछे देखेंगे तो इस दिन पे we had a free will to an extent, for example attending the session or not, having this discussion or not, तब जाके लगेगा कि it was predestined. पर अभी तो वो चॉइस चल रही है ना, तो आई थिंक to that abhi ke liye I think that free will does exist. It's not like entirely predestined. I'm not sure मतलब एकदम exactly इस context में बैठ रहा है कि नहीं, but I once ऐसे ही मतलब मेरे को ख्याल आ रहा, मैंने लिख दिया था कि we know that we have slept only when we wake up. I don't know if it explains what we are talking, but
Dr. Strange has this theory that the dreams that you have are experiencing.
Yeah, maybe
It's
it's a
something
portal
different.
to a
हाँ,
different time zone, or like a,
So your variant is experiencing that.
yeah.
Like if you experience somebody is trying to kill you, there is some variation of you who's actually getting killed by someone.
Yeah.
And that is how you are connecting with your other self in dreams.